Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding you need to renew your driver's license, pay your quarterly taxes, and maybe book a specialist doctor's appointment.
Yeah, all before breakfast.
Right, exactly. A decade ago, that was, what, 3 separate trips? 3 waiting rooms?
And just an endless stack of paper forms.
I mean, probably a few hours of your life completely gone. But today, you just do it from your kitchen table before your coffee even gets cold. And you do it all without talking to a single human being.
It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really is. It feels like magic. It feels completely seamless. But I mean, underneath that invisible interface is this incredibly complex and frankly fragile blueprint. And if the people writing that blueprint get it wrong...
The invisible world doesn't just glitch, it collapses under its own weight.
Exactly. And today, we are looking at exactly how a nation actually pulls off that massive neurological rewiring.
Because the stakes for that underlying architecture are they're massive. If that infrastructure fails, the state fails. For a long time, we've liked to think of digital services as, just convenient tools, something extra.
It's a nice to have feature.
Right. But they aren't tools anymore. They are the new roads, the new bridges, the new power grid.
So we've got a really great stack of sources today that give us a front row seat to this process. We are looking at a breakdown of a brand new Norwegian government ministry, an EU interoperability fact sheet, a CEDFOP report on digital education, and a really insightful global forum on cyber expertise report.
Often referred to as the GFCE.
Right, the GFCE report. And that one features interviews with the actual policymakers doing this work on the ground in Norway, Mexico, and Senegal.
It's a great mix of perspectives.
It is. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how a nation builds a master plan for its digital future, using Norway as our sort of real-time case study. Okay, let's unpack this. When a government decides it wants to digitize an entire country, what is step one?
Step one is, it's recognizing a fundamental shift in identity. The sources we're looking at highlight this major transition. It's moving from governments merely using computers to governments fundamentally redesigning themselves as digital-first entities.
Which is a massive paradigm shift.
Absolutely. Before a government can build any sort of digital infrastructure, it needs a strategy. But the GFCE report illustrates something really fascinating. The actual document you produce is often way less important than the process you use to write it.
Which brings us to Robin Bake. He's the Norwegian civil servant who led their 4th national cybersecurity strategy back in 2018.
And Norway's been doing this since 2003, right? So they aren't rookies.
Right, they've been at it a while. And for this 4th iteration, Bake wanted the process to be entirely open. We are talking about national conferences opened by the Prime Minister, workshops, and openly sharing drafts with everyone.
Getting everyone involved.
Exactly. But the detail in the sources that really just alters how we think about government planning is that Norway deliberately chose not to put an end date on this strategy.
Yeah, that is such a pragmatic move.
Right. And they also completely detached the action plan from the main strategy document.
Well, think about how fast technology moves, right? If you bind a national cyber strategy to a rigid, say, 5-year timeline,
you're pretty much guaranteeing it'll be obsolete.
Completely obsolete before the clock even runs out. The threat landscape, the technological capabilities, they change in weeks, not years.
It's basically like a smartphone operating system. Apple or Google don't just release an OS and announce, this is the final version for the next 5 years, good luck.
Yeah, that would be disastrous.
It's never truly finished. It just gets continuous patches and updates based on real-world conditions. By separating them, Norway's main strategy acts as that core operating system. It sets the overarching direction and the philosophy.
Meanwhile, the separate action plan gets all the frequent updates, the security patches, the tactical adjustments based on what's actually happening in the real world.
Makes total sense.
It does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, tailoring that development process to the specific reality of the country is really the only way these strategies survive contact with the real world.
Which is where Mexico and Senegal come in.
Right. The GFCE report expands on this perfectly. Take Mexico in 2017. Their strategy was led by Carmen Valeria Solis Rivera, and they had support from the Organization of American States.
Big OAS.
Exactly. Now, the temptation for a lot of countries, especially when you have international bodies helping out, is to just download some international template, change the name of the country at the top, and call it a day.
With a quick copy-paste job with the paper.
Which usually ends in a complete disaster. Because a template written in a boardroom in Geneva doesn't understand the broadband infrastructure of rural Mexico.
Right.
But Mexico avoided that. They held extensive public online consultations. They received over 80 specific comments from the public that were directly incorporated into the final text.
Which changes the DNA of the document completely. I mean, those little comments mean the strategy is actually reacting to what the business needs, what the privacy concerns, the actual reality of the business.
Exactly. Rather than some theory. And we see another vital adaptation in Senegal, guided by rapid cycles. They started with what's called capacity reserve law.
Okay, let's define that because I feel like that can sound like a bit of a corporate term.
Fair enough. It's essentially a really rigorous diagnostic test. Instead of just guessing what digital capabilities are needed, they ran a systematic assessment based on exactly what digital must be
Which one's the least?
right, completely missing or just underdeveloped. But the most crucial discovery they made wasn't about the government at all. It was the realization that the private sector actually owns most of the critical national infrastructure in
Oh, you mean like the physical fiber optic cables, the cell towers, server farms?
all of it. So you can't just have a group of government officials sitting in a closed room writing orders. If a private telecom company owns the infrastructure, your government policy is literally just delicious unless that telecom company actually finds it.
Oh, wow. That makes sense.
Senegal had to bring the public, private, and civil sectors together from day one just to build actual trust and operational reality into their strategy.
But here's where reality bites hard, doesn't it? You can have the most inclusive strategy, the best diagnostic tests, the most tailored documents, but it can still fail completely if you don't have the engine to drive.
Yes, implementation is hard.
The GFCE report points out that Senegal faced massive hurdles after that planning phase. First off, language barriers. Most international cyber guidance and best practices are written in English,
Which is a huge problem because the local stakeholders in Senegal operate in French.
meaning the very tools they needed to execute were largely inaccessible. And more critically, they had this beautifully drafted, cabinet-approved strategy, but at the time of the report, they had no implementation plan.
None at all.
None. And they had not identified which institution would take the lead.
See, this raises a really important question for anyone looking at this stuff. How useful is a pristine blueprint if you don't have a funded, mandated construction firm to build it?
It's useless.
Yeah, an unfunded mandate is really just a suggestion.
And answering that exact question, who was actually in charge of the execution,
Okay.
is where Norway took a massive swing. They didn't just assign a task force or temporary committee.
Yeah, by much bigger.
On January 1st, 2024, Norway restructured the government itself to establish a brand new body, the Ministry of Digitalization and Public Government.
Which is a huge deal.
Right? Before this, the minister responsible, who is currently carrying out the fund, was just tucked away inside the Ministry of Local Government.
It was essentially a side hustle for a broader department.
Exactly. And Norway realized that this wasn't cutting it.
We really need to pause and look at the scale of this. Creating a new ministry isn't just shuffling desks. It's a fundamental redistribution of power.
When you look at the structural breakdown of this new ministry, the scale is staggering. They didn't just hire a few IT consultants. They transferred over 130 employees right out of the gate.
Right.
They set up 5 distinct departments, handling everything from IT policy to state employer policy, and they oversee 11 distinct agencies. We aren't just talking about basic administrative support.
Yeah, not at all.
They brought the Norwegian Data Protection Authority, the Research Council of Norway, the Communications Authority, and the newly formed Digitalization Agency, all under this one roof.
Let's analyze why centralizing those specific agencies matters so much. Think about the historical tension between rapid digitalization and data privacy.
Yeah, they usually clash.
Always. Usually the people trying to build fast digital services are constantly fighting with the Data Protection Authority, who act as this external watchdog trying to slow things down.
Right, making sure things are secure.
By bringing them under the same ministerial umbrella, Norway is forcing them to collaborate from the very inception of a project. Privacy isn't just an afterthought or, an external hurdle you have to clear at the very end. It's engineered into the governance structure itself.
It shifts the entire power dynamic of the government.
It really does. It makes a profound statement. By centralizing digital governance at the cabinet level, IT is no longer an administrative back office function. It's treated with the exact same level of gravity as national security or finance or foreign policy.
Yeah.
When the Minister of Digitalization sits at the same table as the Minister of Defense, it means digital infrastructure is a primary lens through which all national policy must be viewed.
You can't plan a national defense strategy without them.
Exactly. You can't plan defense or a new healthcare initiative without the digital minister weighing in on the architecture.
Okay, so Norway has this flexible living strategy like we talked about, and now they have the heavy-duty engine of a dedicated cabinet-level ministry to drive it.
Right.
But what is this engine actually trying to do? I mean, what does success look like in the real world for them?
So they are operating under a framework called the Digital Norway of the Future, which runs from 2024 to 2030. And their stated objective is incredibly bold. They want to become the world's most digitalized country by 2030.
Wow, you don't put a highly measurable goal like that in writing unless you are ready to back it up with some serious legislative muscle. I mean, if you fail, everyone will know it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And the legislative muscle is the new Electronic Communications Act, or the ECOM Act, which just went into force on January 1st, 2025. This is the real teeth behind that 2030 vision. They basically took old legislation from 2003 and fundamentally overhauled it to reflect modern reality.
So how does that actually impact the daily reality of someone, living or operating a business in Norway?
Well, for the first time, it heavily regulates data centers. Previously, almost anyone could essentially just set up a server farm. Now there is mandatory registration and strict security requirements.
So they're keeping track of everyone.
Yes. If you want to process data in Norway, the government needs to know who you are and exactly how you are protecting that infrastructure. It also aligns cookie consent strictly with the EU's GDPR.
Meaning an end to those confusing predatory pop-ups on websites.
Exactly. Much cleaner consent. And furthermore, it forces a broadband supply obligation.
Meaning telecom companies can't just lay high-speed internet cables in wealthy urban centers where it's, highly profitable and ignore the rural areas. The government is mandating universal access.
Correct. It expands consumer protections and guarantees that the physical infrastructure reaches every corner of the country, regardless of how remote it is.
Hold on, I'm seeing a bit of a contradiction here in the sources.
Okay, what do you see?
On one hand, Norway is dropping the hammer with these strict ECOM Act regulations, right? Mandatory data center registrations, heavy security requirements, strict consumer protections.
Right.
But on the other hand, the EU interoperability fact sheet highlights Norway's Start-Off program.
Yeah.
This is a GovTech initiative launched back in 2021, specifically designed to strip away red tape. It uses a startup-friendly procurement model to basically minimize the time invested by both the government and the startups.
So they can move faster.
Exactly. So these small, agile tech companies can get government contracts quickly. So my question is, how do they not accidentally lower their security standards if they're intentionally rushing the procurement process just to keep up with private sector innovation?
That is the fundamental tension in modern governance, isn't it? Speed versus security. Do you move fast and break things, or do you move slow and secure things?
Right.
Norway is attempting to bridge that gap through strict interoperability and open source architecture. Look at the design system they launched in June 2025, which is managed by that new digitalization agency. Okay.
It's an open-source, collaborative platform providing reusable user interface components, code, and guidelines for the entire public sector.
So instead of thinking about this like handing a startup a blank check and just hoping they build something secure, it's more like a city providing a standardized, highly secure plumbing grid.
That's a great analogy.
Startups don't have to invent their own pipes from scratch and prove they won't leak. They just hook up their new, innovative appliances to the existing secure water line.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And Norway is highly active in the Digital Public Goods Alliance. The core philosophy here is reuse and sharing.
Right. Don't reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. When a startup comes in through that fast-tracked start-off program, they aren't building in a vacuum. They are plugging into an ecosystem where the security, the privacy compliance, and the standardized architecture are largely baked into the foundation already.
Oh, I see.
This allows the procurement and development of specific, innovative applications to move at startup speed without compromising the integrity of the national system. You secure the foundation so the house can be built quickly. That makes a lot of sense. But here's the catch.
There's always a catch.
We can talk about ECOM acts, data center regulations, and brilliant open source ecosystems all day long.
Yeah.
But all of this broadband infrastructure is entirely useless if the actual citizens don't know how to use it.
Oh, absolutely.
If you build a digital utopia, but the people living in it are locked out because they just don't understand the interface, well, the strategy has failed.
You've just created a divided two-tier society, the technologically literate who can access government services and everyone else who is just left behind. And that brings us to the real human element of this deep dive.
Exactly. And this is where the CEDAFOP report on digital education comes in. In April 2023, the government published a strategy dedicated solely to digital competence and infrastructure. And what's wild is the sheer scope of this document. It spans from kindergarten all the way through vocational education and training, or VET.
Well, it has to, because a 2030 goal means the children learning their ABCs today are the citizens and the workforce that will inherit this system tomorrow. You have to start there.
So what does this all mean on the ground? I mean, it means we aren't just talking about throwing iPads at toddlers and hoping they figure it out.
No, definitely not.
The strategy is heavily focused on practical applied skills. For a vocational student studying to be an electrician, a mechanic, or a healthcare worker, it means the government is ensuring they have access to the exact real-world diagnostic tech and software they will use in their trades. And critically, it focuses on the teachers.
Which is so important. You can't teach a 21st century curriculum with 20th century training.
Exactly why the Directorate for Education and Training had to massively update their resources just so teachers and school leaders could actually keep up with the technology they're supposed to be teaching. It's an immense logistical undertaking, all tied to a broader goal of protecting those at risk of digital exclusion.
What's fascinating here is the holistic nature of the approach. When you look at how Norway is tackling the digital divide, they are squeezing it from both ends.
How so?
On one side, you have the education strategy actively building up competence in the youth and the workforce. On the other side, you have the Public Administration Act.
Which is a fascinating piece of legislation.
It really is. This act explicitly dictates that the public sector must communicate digitally with citizens by default.
By default, wow.
Yes, unless a citizen proactively goes out of their way to opt out, they are getting their government correspondence digitally. They are effectively forcing the society to adapt. I mean, imagine your grandparents suddenly having to navigate a digital-only interface just for their pension.
It's a total sink or swim mandate. But they aren't just throwing people in the deep end, right?
Yeah.
They are providing swimming lessons through that education we talked about and building heavy-duty safety nets to catch those who might stumble.
Which brings us to the universal design of ICT.
Right. Tell us about that.
So this regulation, which originally came into effect back in 2013 and has been heavily enforced since, mandates that websites, mobile apps, and self-service machines must be accessible to everyone, including the visually and hearing impaired.
It's a legal requirement.
It is, and it's rooted in their Equality and Anti-Discrimination Act. The government is basically saying, yes, we are moving the entire apparatus of the state online, but we are legally bound to ensure that this online world is easily navigable by absolutely everyone, regardless of their physical or cognitive abilities.
You cannot mandate digital by default without mandating universal accessibility.
Exactly.
It really is a massive synchronized undertaking. So, to wrap up this journey for you, the listener, we started by looking at how a nation builds a flexible, living cyber strategy that never truly expires, learning from the adaptability of Mexico's public comments and the private sector realities of Senegal.
Right?
We saw how Norway solved the execution problem by constructing a dedicated cabinet-level Ministry of Digitalization, shifting the power dynamics of the entire government to put IT on par with national defense.
A massive shift.
We looked at the aggressive, highly regulated legal goals they've set for 2030 with the E-Com Act, balancing strict security with the rapid startup innovation of their open-source plumbing grid. And finally, we explored the crucial ground-level reality of training the population from kindergarten to the vocational workforce to ensure nobody is locked out of this new world.
And it's vital to remember why this matters to you. Whether you are a business owner trying to figure out how new data center regulations affect your overhead, or just a citizen wanting a frictionless, secure way to renew a passport or access your medical records, these invisible policy frameworks directly dictate your daily life.
Absolutely.
They dictate the security of your identity, the speed of your local economy, and the accessibility of your government. These aren't just abstract white papers gathering dust on a shelf. They are the literal rules of the road for the 21st century.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder. If a nation like Norway successfully achieves its goal of becoming fully, seamlessly digitized by 2030, and its core strategy deliberately has no end date, constantly updating in the background like a smartphone operating system,
Yeah.
at what point do we stop calling it a digital strategy and just start calling it reality?